What if I told you that the very rhythm of your life is based on a historical accident? That the calendar hanging on your wall, the digital clock on your phone, the entire system we use to mark the passage of our days, is not the product of divine wisdom, but of pagan emperors, political compromises, and forgotten wars? What if I told you that humanity was given a perfect celestial timepiece calendar directly from the mind of Godin, that we, in our ignorance and arrogance, discarded it, broke it, and hid it away? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a story buried in the pages of one of the most controversial and mysterious books ever written. A text that claims to be a secret revelation given to Moses on the summit of Mount Sinai. We are not just talking about a few misplaced days or the inconvenience of a leap year. We are talking about a fundamental schism in time itself, a deliberate turning away from a divine pattern in favor of a human-made chaos. A lost calendar, so perfect, so symmetrical, that its rediscovery has the power to challenge everything we think we know about God's law, biblical prophecy, and the sacred rhythm of the cosmos. Today, we journey deep into the wilderness of history, far beyond Rome and its Caesars, to the smoking peak of a holy mountain. We will uncover the secrets of the Lesser Genesis, a book guarded by angels and preserved by a community of mystics who were willing to die to protect its truths. Prepare yourself, because we are about to reveal the divine blueprint of God's 364-day calendar. We will expose the ancient war fought over its custody and ask the most crucial question of all. What happens when humanity falls out of sync with heaven's clock? Stay with me until the end, because the story of this lost calendar is the story of a lost path we may finally be ready to find again. Our journey begins in a place of fire and awe. We all know the account in the Book of Exodus. Moses ascends Mount Sinai, disappearing into a cloud of divine glory for 40 days and 40 nights. He returns with the 10 Commandments, 2 stone tablets inscribed by the very finger of God, along with the intricate laws that would form the covenant with the nation of Israel. This is the bedrock of the Judeo-Christian faith. But the Book of Jubilees, an ancient text revered by some, rejected by most, makes a claim that is both staggering and profound. It insists that God gave Moses much more than the law. According to Jubilees, during that same period on the mountain, God commanded one of his chief angels, Sam, angel of the presence, to sit with Moses and dictate to him the entire history of the world. It was to be a detailed account from the first day of creation up to that very moment, a secret history that would explain the deeper meaning behind the events of Genesis and early Exodus. The angel unfolded a scroll of time itself, dividing all of history into Jubilees, which are periods of 49 years, 7 cycles of 7 sabbatical years. This is why the book is known not only as the Lesser Genesis, but also as the Book of Division. This angelic revelation was meant to fill in the gaps, to connect the dots that the public account in Genesis left open. It gives names to the wives of Cain, Seth, and the patriarchs. It tells the detailed story of the fallen angels, the Watchers, who lusted after human women, taught humanity forbidden arts, and unleashed demonic spirits upon the earth, a story only hinted at in Genesis 6. It provides a precise and unwavering timeline for every birth, death, and covenant. In essence, the Book of Jubilees presents itself as the director's cut of Genesis, the unabridged, authoritative history of heaven and earth. But nestled within its sweeping chronology of ages and patriarchs lies its most revolutionary and explosive secret, the blueprint for God's true calendar. The angel reveals to Moses that the universe was not structured on the shifting, unreliable cycles of the moon, nor on the messy, imperfect solar cycle of 365, 25 days that our modern world struggles to manage. Instead, the entire cosmos, from the movement of the sun to the rhythm of worship, was built upon a perfect, symmetrical, and eternal solar calendar of exactly 364 days. This was not a suggestion. It was a divine command, an eternal statute inscribed, the book claims, on heavenly tablets before the world was even made. To truly grasp the magnitude of this revelation, we must examine the divine architecture of this calendar, Its elegance and perfection are unlike anything devised by human hands. It is a system of absolute harmony. The 364-day year is divided into 4 seasons, each a perfect mirror of the others. Each season contains exactly 13 weeks. This is our first clue. The number 13, often viewed with superstition today, here represents a perfect quarter of a divine year. Each 91-day season is composed of 3 months. The first 2 months of each season have 30 days, and the third and final month has 31 days. So, the pattern for each of the 4 seasons is identical. 30 plus 30 plus 31 equals 91 days. When you multiply this by the 4 seasons, you arrive at the perfect total, 91 days. X 4 seasons equals 364 days. Here is where the divine genius of the system becomes undeniable. The number 364 is perfectly divisible by 7. 364 divided by 7 equals exactly 52. The year is comprised of 52 perfect weeks with no remainder. This simple mathematical fact has earth-shattering theological implications. It means that every single date of the year would fall on the same day of the week, every single year, for all of eternity. The pattern is fixed. The rhythm is unbreakable. Think of what this means for the biblical feasts. The Passover, which was to begin on the 14th day of the first month, would always begin on a Tuesday evening, leading into a Wednesday. The Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost, which occurs 50 days later, would always fall on a Sunday. The Day of Atonement, the most solemn day of the year, would always occur on a Friday. The entire liturgical cycle would be locked into a permanent, predictable, and holy rhythm. There would be no need for priests to look for the sliver of a new moon. There would be no need for complex human calculated interpolations to keep the calendar in check. The calendar was a perfect reflection of its creator, unchanging, orderly, and eternal. This celestial clock stands in stark contrast to the systems that replaced it. The lunisolar calendar, eventually adopted by the mainstream Jewish authorities in Jerusalem, was a constant struggle for reconciliation. The lunar year of about 354 days fell hopelessly behind the sun, and so an extra leap month had to be periodically inserted by human decree to prevent the spring festivals from drifting into winter. This meant the length of the year was inconsistent, and the start of each month depended on the variable human observation of the new moon. It was a system of perpetual adjustment and correction. Our modern Gregorian calendar is no different. It is a solar calendar, but it's based on the messy reality of a 2,425-day year. Our solution is the leap day, a clumsy but necessary patch we add every 4 years to fix a system that is inherently imperfect. According to the author of Jubilees, these human-made calendars were not merely inaccurate. They were an abomination. They were a rejection of divine order in favor of Gentile chaos. The angel makes this point to Moses with a chilling prophecy recorded in chapter 6 of the book. The warning is not subtle. It is a direct indictment of those who would abandon this perfect system. And you command the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning 364 days. And these will constitute a complete year, and they will not corrupt its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor corrupt any feast. But if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will corrupt all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order, and they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. The passage continues with an even more direct condemnation of the alternative. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make a day of testimony a day of uncleanness, and a feast day a profane day. This is a theological declaration of war. Following a lunar-based calendar is presented as an act of cosmic rebellion. It disturbs the seasons, corrupts the feasts, and turns holy days into profane ones. The text argues that this perfect calendar is preordained, written on heavenly tablets alongside the great story of creation. It is God's time. To choose any other system is to walk in the error and ignorance of the pagan nations who worship the moon, to knowingly step out of God's prescribed order and into a profane timeline of human invention. The choice was clear: the unchanging light of the sun, representing God's eternal truth, or the waxing and waning moon, representing the fickle and flawed ways of the world. For nearly 2,000 years, this radical claim was confined to the fringes of history. The Book of Jubilees was preserved in its entirety only in the Ge'ez language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which uniquely includes it in its official biblical canon. For the rest of the world, it was apocrypha, a historical curiosity. Scholars knew of it, but many dismissed its calendar as a purely utopian fantasy, an idealistic priest's dream of a perfect world that had no basis in reality. No one, they argued, ever actually lived by this strange 364-day clock. They were wrong. In 1947, in the arid wilderness of Judea, history was waiting in a cave. A young Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost animal near a place called Qumran, tossed a rock into a dark opening and heard the unexpected sound of shattering pottery. What he and his companions would find inside were ancient jars containing the first of what we now know as the Dead Sea Scrolls. This discovery was arguably the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century, and it would blow the scholarly consensus on the Book of Jubilees to pieces. As experts began the painstaking process of unearthing and translating thousands of fragile manuscript fragments from 11 different caves, they found a treasure trove of ancient Jewish writings. Among them, they discovered more than 15 separate copies of the Book of Jubilees. This was a staggering number, more copies than were found for some books of the canonical Hebrew Bible like Esther or Ezekiel. It was immediate, undeniable proof that for the mysterious community that lived at Qumran, Jubilees was not a fringe text. It was a work of immense importance and authority. But the real bombshell was yet to come. The scrolls revealed, in stunning detail, that the Qumran community, a devout, ascetic Jewish sect widely believed to be the Essenes, did not just revere the Book of Jubilees. They structured their entire existence around its 364-day solar calendar. This was not a theory, it was their lived reality. Other scrolls, such as the famous Temple Scroll, which lays out the blueprint for a perfect future temple, were meticulously organized according to this calendar. They found calendrical documents, known as mishmarot, which detailed the 24 priestly courses and how they would serve in the temple over a 6-year cycle, all based on the 364-day year. They discovered texts that synchronized this solar calendar with the phases of the moon, not to determine the feasts, but likely for astrological or other secondary purposes, proving they were brilliant astronomers who chose the solar calendar for theological reasons. The Qumran library was the final, irrefutable proof. A community of intensely devout Jews had, for over a century, lived and breathed by the light of this perfect solar clock. And this brings us to the heart of the ancient war over time. The Essenes of Qumran did not see themselves as an alternative sect. They saw themselves as the only true Israel. They looked at the magnificent Herodian temple in Jerusalem, the center of Jewish life, and worshipped with utter contempt. Why? Because the priests in Jerusalem, a mix of politically savvy Sadducees and increasingly popular Pharisees, operated the temple according to the corrupt lunisolar calendar. The Qumran community, led by a mysterious figure they called the Teacher of Righteousness, had broken away from Jerusalem precisely because they believed the temple priesthood, led by a wicked priest, had defiled the sanctuary by adopting this false calendar. Try to imagine the depth of this schism. Picture the scene. In Jerusalem, the city is bustling. Pilgrims pour in from all over the world for the great festival of Passover. The temple priests, having declared the start of the month by the observation of the new moon, prepare the lambs for sacrifice. The air is thick with incense and anticipation. But 15 miles away, in their stark, isolated community by the Dead Sea, the people of Qumran are in a state of solemn mourning. For them, the real Passover is still days away, dictated by their fixed solar calendar. They view the entire spectacle in Jerusalem not as worship, but as a blasphemous charade. They believe the priests are slaughtering the lambs on a profane day, that the people are celebrating in error, and that the entire temple service is an offense to God. This wasn't a minor liturgical dispute. This was a declaration that the official, state-sanctioned religion of Judea was illegitimate and apostate. This is why they retreated to the desert. They went into the wilderness to create a pure community, a new temple of living stones, where they could preserve God's true laws and worship according to God's true time, waiting for the day when God would judge the wicked in Jerusalem and vindicate them. Their entire identity was built on the foundation of this calendar. It was the standard of their rebellion and the emblem of their righteousness. So, if this calendar was so vital, if it was defended so fiercely by a community of believers, and if it claims the highest possible authority, a direct angelic revelation on Sinai, why is it completely absent from our world today? Why did it vanish so completely that its very existence was doubted until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls? The answer is a tragedy written in fire, blood, and politics. The first blow was fatal. The guardians of the calendar were annihilated. In 68 AD, as the Roman 10th Legion under General Vespasian swept through Judea to put down the First Jewish-Roman War, they reached the settlement at Qumran. The community was destroyed, its buildings burned, its people slaughtered or scattered to the winds. Before the end, they managed to hide their precious library of scrolls in the nearby caves, a final, desperate act to preserve the truths they had died for. With the fall of Qumran, the most ardent and knowledgeable adherents of the 364-day calendar were wiped from the face of the earth. 2 years later, in 70 AD, the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem and utterly destroyed the Second Temple. The entire system of sacrificial Judaism collapsed. In the ashes of this catastrophe, the Sadducean priestly class, who had controlled the temple, vanished. The leadership role fell to the surviving Pharisees and their intellectual descendants, the rabbis. At a town called Yavne, they began the monumental task of recodifying Judaism for a world without a temple. This meant standardizing everything: the law, the liturgy, and the canon of Scripture. In this new, fragile reality, there was no room for the radical, divisive claims of the Book of Jubilees. The rabbis chose to solidify the lunisolar calendar, the very system Jubilees condemned as an abomination. Jubilees, with its claim to be a higher law, its harsh polemics, and its association with a now-defunct apocalyptic sect, was deemed too dangerous. It challenged the authority of the rabbis to interpret the law and set the calendar. So, it was excluded from the official canon of the Hebrew Bible. It was demoted to the status of apocrypha book to be hidden away. Early Christianity faced a similar choice. As the church grew and became increasingly Gentile, it distanced itself from its Jewish roots and the intricate debates over the Jewish calendar. The major controversy for them was the date of Easter, which pitted those who wanted to celebrate it on the Jewish Passover against those who wanted it on a fixed Sunday. The idea of adopting a completely different 364-day calendar from a fringe Jewish sect was a non-starter. The pagan Julian calendar, instituted by Julius Caesar, was the calendar of the Roman Empire, the secular world they lived in. It eventually became the default, later being updated by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582 to create the Gregorian calendar we use today. The divine timepiece, born on a holy mountain, was replaced by a system devised by a Roman dictator and adjusted by a Catholic pope. God's time was lost, buried under the sands of Qumran and the political decrees of empires. And so, we arrive back in our present moment, armed with this resurrected knowledge. We are the first generations in 2 millennia to understand the full scope of what was lost. We can now see that the 364-day calendar was not a fantasy, but a cornerstone of faith for a people who saw it as a divine mandate. we can see that a great war over time itself was fought, and that the calendar we inherited is the victor's calendar, the calendar of the rabbis who rejected Jubilees and the Romans who destroyed its followers. This realization forces us to confront a series of profound and deeply unsettling questions. If God truly did ordain a perfect calendar, what does it mean that the entire world has been living out of sync with it for 2,000 years? The Bible speaks of God's appointed times, his modemas, moments of crucial divine intersection with humanity. Have we been missing these appointments? Is it possible that a deeper understanding of biblical prophecy is locked away, waiting for us to find the right calendrical key? The Book of Jubilees and the Dead Sea Scrolls paint a picture of a universe where time is not a neutral, abstract concept. Time is moral. Time is theological. To align with God's time is to participate in his divine order. To fall out of it is to wander in a wilderness of human error. We have been wandering for a very long time. After this deep dive into the heart of a biblical mystery, I must ask you directly, what does your spirit tell you? Is this 364-day calendar simply a fascinating historical artifact, the failed experiment of an apocalyptic cult? Or do you feel the pull of its divine symmetry? Do you see it as a lost truth, a piece of God's perfect pattern that was deliberately hidden and is now being revealed for such a time as this? I urge you to take this question seriously. Leave your analysis, your insights, your questions in the comment box below. This is a topic that demands discussion among all who seek the deeper truths of God's Word. If you believe this knowledge is important, that these lost secrets need to be brought into the light, then please give this video a thumbs up and, most importantly, share it. You can help awaken others to this incredible story. We are living in an age of revelation, where secrets long buried are being unearthed. The rediscovery of God's calendar may be one of the most important revelations of all. It reminds us that God's kingdom is one of perfect order, and it invites us, at long last, to set our clocks to heaven's time.